All right, let's dive right in. The date is June 22nd, 1941. It's 3:15 in the morning, and the Eastern Front is about to explode. This is the moment Operation Barbarossa kicks off. We're talking about the largest land invasion in all of human history, an event that didn't just change the war, it completely redefined it.
I mean, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around the sheer scale of what was about to happen. This wasn't just another battle or some minor campaign. Oh no, this was a colossal undertaking, an invasion force so massive, its goal was to literally wipe the Soviet Union off the map in just a few months.
So let's put a number on this, shall we? 3.5 million men. Just let that sink in. We're talking 3 entire army groups, backed by thousands upon thousands of tanks, guns, and planes, all set to pour across the border at the exact same time. It's just an absolutely staggering number.
But the real story, the one that's just mind-boggling, actually starts in those last 24 hours. The whole world is basically holding its breath, and you have this incredible drama playing out. Crystal clear warnings on one side, and this almost surreal level of denial on the other. It's truly a night of stark contrasts.
So throughout that last day, the warning signs were just piling up. I mean, they were impossible to ignore. First, a Soviet sub spots a huge German convoy. Then, and this is a wild story, a German sergeant, a committed communist named Alfred Liskov, literally swims across a river under fire just to tell the Soviets the attack is coming. And then, boom, all the phone lines get cut. The evidence is overwhelming, right? And yet the final warning that goes out to the Soviet troops is this incredibly watered-down message, basically saying, hey, be careful of provocations. Just unbelievable.
And this quote from Stalin really tells you everything you need to know about what was going on in his head. Even with all that evidence, his first thought isn't, we're being invaded. It's, this is a trick. He was convinced the Germans were sending over this turncoat to try and bait him into starting a fight, to give them an excuse. It was a paranoid, and as it turns out, a completely catastrophic miscalculation. Okay, and this slide just lays out the absolute insanity of that night. You've got these two completely different worlds. Over in Germany, Hitler's basically popping the champagne already. He's listening to his victory music, he's talking about the Russian marble he's going to use to build new German cities. Meanwhile, what's happening on the Soviet side? Well, one of their top generals gets the warning and then finishes watching a comedy show. Another lets a concert play out before alerting his troops. And get this, Soviet and German officers are literally at a ball together just hours before the invasion. The contrast is just wow.
All right, so now let's turn our attention to the invasion force itself, the German Wehrmacht. And you have to understand, this wasn't just any army. This was an army at the absolute peak of its power, just oozing confidence after a whole string of incredible victories.
By 1941, the German military had swelled to these huge numbers. I mean, think about it. 1 out of every 4 men in Germany was in uniform. War had become the fabric of their society. But it wasn't just about the size. The key thing here is experience. These guys weren't rookies. They'd already steamrolled through Poland, France, and the Balkans. They knew how to win.
And this experienced war machine was organized into 3 giant arrows, basically 3 massive army groups, each with its own armored spearhead, its own Panzer Group. You had Army Group North heading for Leningrad. Army Group Center, the biggest of them all, was aimed right at Smolensk, and Army Group South was driving towards Kiev. Each one of these was a powerhouse.
So, when you put all of this together, what do you get? You get what was probably the most effective, most dangerous fighting force on the planet at that time. These guys were battle-hardened. They had incredible coordination between their tanks, infantry, and the Luftwaffe, their air force. And maybe most importantly, they'd done all this while taking surprisingly few losses. They felt invincible.
Okay, so that's the German side. Now let's flip the coin and look at who they were about to face, the Soviet Red Army. And on paper, oh man, they looked like an absolute colossus, a true giant. But, and this is a huge but, this giant had some really deep, really critical flaws.
The Soviets had their own way of organizing things. They had 4 massive fronts, which is basically their version of an army group, crammed all along that western border. We're talking more than 130 divisions ready to go. The sheer amount of manpower they had there was just immense, especially down in the southwest under General Karparnos.
And here is where the numbers just get absolutely wild. The Red Army had something like 24,000 tanks. 24,000. That is more than 7 times what the Germans were bringing to the party. On paper, that should have been it. Game over. an advantage nobody could overcome.
But, and this is one of the most important buts of the entire war, that massive number was basically a mirage. The truth? Only about a quarter of those tanks were actually in fighting shape. The rest were broken down, waiting for parts, basically giant paperweights. They were completely useless.
And this whole situation created this weird two-sided failure. On the one hand, the Soviets couldn't actually use their huge advantage. But on the other hand, German intelligence was also wrong. They had no clue about the Red Army's secret weapons, the brand new T-34 and KV-1 tanks. So when the German panzers eventually ran into these things, well, let's just say it was a very nasty surprise that sent shockwaves all the way back to Berlin.
So on top of all the broken equipment, the Red Army was just crippled in other ways too. Stalin's purges had gutted the officer corps, getting rid of experienced commanders. The training was a joke. I mean, you had tank drivers with literally 1 hour behind the wheel. And then, because the attack was a total surprise, whole divisions were caught sleeping in their barracks, miles and miles from where they needed to be. It was a perfect storm of disasters.
And so we come back to that moment, 3:15 a.m., on the exact anniversary of France's surrender, no less. The silence is just shattered by this unbelievable roar of artillery all along a 1,000-mile front. The largest war in history has just kicked off, and the very nature of this conflict is about to change forever.
So, as shells are raining down all along the border, what's happening back in Germany? Well, Propaganda Minister Goebbels gets on the radio and reads this proclamation from Hitler. And notice the language here. He's not saying we're invading a neighbor. He's framing this as some epic, destiny-defining struggle, putting the entire fate of the German people into the hands of his soldiers.
And this is maybe the most crucial point of all. This wasn't going to be like the war in France. The official orders given to the German army called for a war of annihilation. It was designed from the very beginning to be something far more brutal, far more ideological, and far more inhuman than anything the world had seen yet. This was a whole new kind of war.
So the start of Operation Barbarossa wasn't just about taking land or winning a battle. It was the beginning of a terrifying new chapter in the Second World War. A chapter that would unleash a level of brutality and suffering that was just off the charts. And it leaves us with this one really haunting question from that morning. Had humanity itself just gone out the window?